Hello, everybody, and welcome to Table Talk. My name is Joni Rampola, one of the registered licensed dietitians with your Giant and Martin stores. And today on Table Talk, we are learning all about peaches and onions with my guest, Michael. Michael, want to take a minute to introduce yourself and tell us where you work?
My name's Michael Bloom. I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Keystone Fruit Marketing. We're based out of Greencastle, Pennsylvania. So we're fairly local to Giant, but we represent growers from all over the country, including Mexico and Peru as well. So we've got quite a few growers that we deal with.
Very nice. So I want to understand a little bit more about that. Growers, can you tell us a little bit about your job, your role,
Yeah,
and more about your company so we understand how you represent growers?
absolutely. So in my role, I'm personally responsible for achieving our sales goals and of course our budget. I'm also I need to make sure that our growers are getting paid a fair price for their products. So we're kind of the liaison between the growers and the people at Giant and Martin's that are buying the products. If you take peaches, for example, if you're paying $2 a pound, um, though that money not only goes towards helping Giant put those peaches on the counter, and that goes from receiving their product in their distribution center, trucking them from their distribution center to all the different Giant and Martin stores, and everyone at store level, whether it's the produce manager, the cashier, or even that young person, bringing carts in from the parking lot. It also helps pay for everybody at Keystone. We have a wide variety of salespeople, finance people, specialist people, which kind of help at the farms, so on and so forth. And and finally, it helps pay the grower for what they're growing. And in retrospect to peaches, it helps pay for their fertilizers and their sprays. It helps pay for them trimming the trees and pruning the trees, picking the peaches, packing the peaches, getting them on a truck and getting them shipped to the Giant and Martin's distribution center. So that little bit of money gets broken out into a lot of different ways and helps pay for everybody. Let's face it, everybody wants to get paid, everybody needs to make a living. But at the bottom line is we're here at Keystone to help get those products from the grower to the consumer, like yourself.
Very interesting. Didn't think about that whole process there. So when
There's
you
a
say
lot that goes into
growers,
it.
yeah, like how many growers do you actually work with?
So we have quite a few growers. Peaches alone, we have 4 growers in South Carolina. We have 3 growers in Georgia, 1 in West Virginia, 2 in Pennsylvania, and 1 in New Jersey. That's just one commodity. If you look at sweet onions, we work with 4 growers in Georgia, 3 in Washington State, 2 in California, 1 in New Mexico, 8 in Peru, and 2 in Mexico. So we're working with a lot of different growers. These growers, some growers hire their own sales staff and they pay their sales staff to go out and sell their product. Most growers, especially with peaches, there's a season. So the time for peaches being actually put on trucks and delivered, um, for us is, middle of May to early September, middle of September. So for the grower to pay a sales staff, um, just to work for a few months isn't counterproductive. So they hire companies like Keystone Fruit Marketing and other companies, to sell their products for them. So that's how that works. So we deal with a lot of growers. The other reason we have so many growers is, especially, if we're concentrating on peaches, one grower's not going to have the peaches every single week during that growing season. They might have a little bit of a gap or a skip, and we have to be able to switch over to another grower to make sure that the Giant and Martin stores have peaches in their stores every single day from the beginning of the season to the end of the season.
I hope our customers appreciate that. So I have some customer questions. Going to start
Mhm.
firing those away.
Sure.
How are you affected, if at all, by the ICE deportation efforts, and how much, in your opinion, does that affect the consumer price?
Hmm. The simple answer is we're not affected, but everybody's affected to some degree. We have what we call H-2A workers, where we hire workers from different countries to come into the United States. It's a great process. Um, some of the some of the workers that we have going to the farms to work do it year after year after year. They absolutely love their job. They love the stability of it, the reliability of it, being able to come back, year after year. Some of them go on to other farms during our off seasons. So realistically, we have all legal workers working for us. That's what our focus is. At times, do some maybe sneak in that are illegal? Yeah, but that's up to the grower to try to avoid that. We want people that are working legally and in this country legally working for our growers. So, really, to answer your question, it doesn't affect us at all.
And related to that question, will tariffs affect the sourcing of products in favor of the U.S. growers over foreign growers?
Yeah, so certainly peaches. We don't import any peaches, but there are peaches that are imported from Chile. I can't speak to that because I'm not that in tune to it. But as I mentioned before, we have growers that we work with in onions in Peru and Mexico. Currently, right now, there's no tariffs on any of the onions coming in from Mexico into the United States, but there is a 10% tariff on um, on onions coming in from Peru. And basically, the way that works is it's just part of our cost of doing business. Um, the onions come in, they're brought in, they're put on boats from Peru, they're put on boats after they're harvested, they're put in 50-pound sacks, put on boats. About 14 days, 12 to 14 days, they arrive at the United States. Then they're taken off, they're inspected, they're put into a cooler. And then as the orders come in from Giant and Martin's, if they need, however many boxes of onions, we'll pack those onions for them and ship them to their distribution center. A lot of the cost of doing that business comes from what we do in the United States, bringing the onions in from port, packing them, storing them, transporting them to the Giant and Martin's DC. So the original cost that's getting tariffed is the value of the onions leaving Mexico and coming into the United States. The value is not that much, so it might change the cost maybe a few cents at most per pound. Maybe it's a penny or 2 cents, maybe 3 cents at most. So as long as the tariffs stay somewhat reasonable and you have 10 to 15, maybe even 20% tariffs, it shouldn't affect the cost that drastically. Again, it might be just a few cents per pound, but ultimately it's not going to be that much. Where we're concerned with and what we're watching is if some of these tariffs get to be 50% or 75% or even 100%, then you're going to see the effects at the retail level. But at least for the commodities that we handle, we're not anticipating any great changes in retail pricing based on tariffs.
Great. Can you address California peaches? What about those?
Yeah, so we're not involved in California peaches. We don't do anything with any growers in California in regards to peaches. But they do ship their peaches across the country. They're on a truck for 5 to 7 days. Those 5 to 7 days are days that our peaches coming from South Carolina or West Virginia or Pennsylvania are not on a truck. We're servicing retailers up and down the East Coast, getting them peaches within a couple of days of picking. The process that we go through is we pick the peaches one day. That night, when they're brought into the shed, they're dumped into a cold bath. That's called hydro cooling to get the heat out of the peaches. Then they're put into the cooler overnight. That helps get the internal temperature down to that 34 to 36 degrees where we want it. Then we pack them the next day, and in most cases, pack them and ship them the same day, many times being delivered to distribution centers like Giant and Martin's the very next day. And then from there, they go from the distribution center to the stores. There's a possibility that you could get peaches that were picked, packed, shipped, reshipped out of the Giant Martin's distribution center and into the stores within 3 or 4 days. It's taken 5 to 7 days just to get those peaches from California across. Of course, they've got different varieties. Those varieties hold up a little bit better. So maybe they're not as fresh, but they're still good peaches. But they're on a truck for 5 to 7 days. Obviously, California grows a lot more peaches than Georgia, South Carolina, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania grow. So they have the supply. Sometimes in the South, and one of the reasons why we work with so many growers, I mentioned it before, is hey, we have little skips or little gaps, and we're trying to fill those skips and the gaps. California doesn't seem to have that problem as often because they're so big. But California is a good piece of fruit. It's just different. Chile is another one. You get a lot of imported peaches and nectarines and stone fruit from Chile during the winter months. Well, those are on a boat for 10 to 12 days. 10 to 12 days, and then maybe on a truck for another day or two. So they're even being transported a lot longer than the peaches from Georgia, South Carolina, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania.
Thank you. That's so interesting. A lot to think about that I wasn't aware of. All right. So a customer's asking, what is the best way to remove the pit from a peach that are not cling free? So just want to say, like, can you address just what is a cling peach when you answer this as well?
Yeah, so there's so many different varieties of peaches, but this is a good way to break them into two categories. They're called a cling-free peach or a cling peach, or instead of cling-free, sometimes they call them a stone-free. So the early varieties, whether we're growing them, whether California's growing them, Chile's growing them, the South, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the early varieties early in the season, those are all cling peaches. What that means is the flesh of the peach actually sticks to the pit. So if you're eating it, you'll see that, boy, sometimes I can't eat all of the peach because it's just stuck to that pit. The stone-free or the cling-free peaches, that peach, that flesh, when it grows away from the pit. So then you don't have that. The best way to remove the peach from the pit, if you don't want to eat around the pit, is just cut it down the center. Maybe cut it in quarters and just if it's a cling pit stone, you're going to have to cut around it. If it's a stone free or a cling free, well, then you cut it, you split it in half, and that it should break right apart right away from that pit.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if you answered some of this already, but a customer is asking, how do you manage the logistics of moving the produce around the country?
Oh my God, it's a challenge every day. We work with a lot of trucking companies. It's all part of what we do. We hire trucks. For example, Giant Martin's will give us an order for a truckload of peaches. We have to then go out. First of all, make sure our growers have the right peaches to meet the specs of Giant and Martin's. Make sure that we can pack them, get them packed on the day that they want to pack. Then we go out and we hire a trucking company to bring that truck, to bring a truck to that packing shed, load it up, and then he drives up to to Giant Martin's distribution center and gets unloaded there. It's just another piece of it. We're dealing with multiple trucking companies trying to get the best rate because but a fair rate because you want to make sure the peaches get there in a timely manner. Sometimes you try to save a little bit money and then you lose the truck or the truck disappears for a couple of days and it's like where'd this truck show up? But we have companies that we've worked with, that we're partners with, that are very reliable. When Giant Martins wants something in their distribution center a certain day, they're doing that because they have store orders that they got to fulfill. So it's extremely important that we have reliable trucking companies. And it's just another piece of our business. We hire, like I said, we work with multiple trucking companies. We hire them, as needed, and get the product loaded and shipped to the Giant Martins distribution center.
Thank you. Who are the peach growers from Pennsylvania?
The two peach growers that we work with are Bream Orchards and Bear Mountain Orchards.
There's a lot of talk about GMOs. A customer wants to know, is there any issue with peaches being genetically modified?
Yeah, simple answer is no. There's always experiments going on, but there's at this point there might be some universities that are experiencing with playing with the development of a peach and a peach seed and a peach tree. But no, at this point, we're not doing anything with GMO in regards to peaches.
And I think people don't realize there are only really 10 GMO crops, and peaches are not one of them.
Good point.
What are some of the environmental impacts you're seeing from extreme weather, heat, drought, flooding, bee and pollinator population decline, etc.?
Yeah, weather's, anytime you're growing fresh produce, weather is an issue or can be an issue. Um, Throughout the winter, we need enough cold hours, and that's when the temperatures get below 40 degrees for a certain period of time. So we need, 1,000 hours of that, but it's not an exact science. So we need to make sure that we get enough cold hours or chill hours throughout the winter so that those trees will pollinate and produce peaches. Years where we have less cold weather in the south, that affects the crop. We don't have as large of a crop. Sometimes it only affects certain varieties, not all varieties. Like I said, there's no exact science to it. We don't know what the magic number is, but we do know if we have a real cold winter, we produce more peaches and probably better peaches in that spring and summer. As far as extreme heat, once these peaches start to grow, especially in Georgia and South Carolina, you get these hot, humid days. Yeah, that helps the peach as long as they have a little bit of rain. We do irrigate. Some of the farms irrigate, not all the farms do, but some of them do, and that certainly helps. But that irrigation doesn't help produce the peaches. It really just helps keep the trees alive. If it's too hot for too long, we don't want these trees dying. These trees will produce for anywhere from 10 to 15 years before they're replaced. So the last thing a grower wants is to put trees in. They take 3 to 4 years before they even start producing any product, any peaches. And the last thing they want is those trees to die after a couple of years. So they irrigate to protect the trees. Sometimes it doesn't protect the crop. Sometimes it helps a little bit. But we're always watching the weather and see what happens. The biggest threat, or one of the biggest threats to us, actually there's two. One is if we have a freeze. Once the peach trees bloom and that temperature gets below 32 degrees, it can just kill the crop completely. We've had a couple of years like that. Again, another reason why we deal with so many growers in different areas, so that, okay, maybe Georgia doesn't have as good of a crop as South Carolina does, or one grower that we deal with in southern South Carolina is hurt, but the northern guy is not, or vice versa. So we got to be diversified in that matter. The other weather threat that is a big threat to peaches is hailstorms. In the summer, you get these hot, humid days, and they have these thunderstorms that produce hail. And boy, hail can go through, and nobody wants a peach with a bunch of pot marks in it, and that's what it does. And it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. If that peach has just started to produce and that hail hits it, you're going to have all these pot marks on it. And it basically, you can't sell those peaches. So hail is something we watch very closely. Again, being diversified with growers all over South Carolina, all over Georgia. Typically, if a hailstorm goes through, it'll hurt one or two growers in certain sections of their farms, certain acreage of their farms. So maybe they might be hurt for a couple weeks, but then they're right back into different varieties and they're okay. So it's all monitoring, everything that goes on day in and day out, just making sure that you have the crop that you need to fulfill the customer's needs.
Excellent. And just had a question about off season when it's not peach growing season in the US.
Yeah, so off season is not as long as some people think. When the crops are finished by the end of September, yeah, they're off, for a couple of months. But you start up sometimes in December, sometimes in January, they're already out trimming the trees, and you got rows and rows and acres of trees. It takes a long time to trim all these trees, take any dead branches or overgrown branches off the trees, so that the tree can stay healthy and produce a good amount of peaches. And you do that, January, February into March, and then you get into March and April and you're fertilizing and you're spraying. Again, you're taking care of these trees, you're feeding the trees, you're making sure that they're extremely healthy. Then you get into May, or actually even in April, you start going around. The trees are starting to pollinate. You've got the blooms on the trees. Sometimes they'll go and they'll knock some of the blooms off because they got too many blooms on the tree. And what that does is it produces, you don't want too many peaches on one tree because then you end up with a lot of very small peaches. So you want them to be a certain size, or hope that they're a certain size. And to help that, you take a lot of these blooms off the tree and you knock them off. Sometimes you wait until the peaches are just starting to grow and then you knock them off. So you're going through all of that. And then before you know it, May is here and you're starting to pick and pack already. So, you got a couple months off, as far as peach growers go, and late in the year. But for the most part, they're working year round.
Excellent. Why are Red Haven peaches so sweet?
So Red Haven is a variety of peach, very popular in Pennsylvania. Um, Sometimes the variety of peach can have better flavor than the others, but most times the variety comes from the sugar content of the peach. And the sugar content is helped by lack of rain. Believe it or not, you want less rain. You want some rain to keep the trees healthy, but not too much rain, because less rain will sweeten the peach. So those hot days when it's 90 degrees and 100 degrees, that's helping the flavor of the peach, more so than anything else. Red Haven is a variety, like I said, that is pretty much predominant in Pennsylvania. They have great soil, great trees. I think overall, I think Pennsylvania peaches are some of the best tasting peaches that we produce, but it changes year to year based on weather.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there organic peaches available to buy? Somebody heard that peaches are one of those fruits that may be heavily pesticide.
Mhm. So, yeah, peaches are very tough in the South because of the hot, humid climate, or even in the Mid-Atlantic regions in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and West Virginia. Because of the humidity, fertilization is extremely important to keep the trees healthy and the peaches healthy. So organics are to grow a peach organically is very difficult on the East Coast. There is one grower in South Carolina that has been doing it for several years, but he's a very small grower. He struggles year to year to make a crop. They're extremely expensive. Um, so we kind of leave the organic growing of peaches to our competitors, our friendly competitors in California. They do a pretty good job. They're able to grow organic peaches. Of course, they've got much bigger farms, so they can allocate some space to grow, organic peaches or nectarines. So it's rare to see any organic peaches on the East Coast.
So I have a customer question. She bought peaches and they were mealy, so not enjoyable. Do you have any tips for buying peaches that might help us avoid this in the future?
It's hard. It's so hard because the mealiness, when the peaches become mealy, it's typically because they're old. They've sat around. We try to move our peaches, from the time they're picked to the time they're packed and shipped within 2 or 3 days, and then we're safe. We love to do it all the same, within a day or two, but 2 or 3 days, and then we're pretty safe. But there are times that peaches sometimes sit around at our peach sheds, at our farms, for 3 or 4 days. That's not ideal for the peaches. Then they also, there's a possibility that maybe something gets misrotated in the giant distribution center, or their inventory gets held up. So maybe it's in there for a day or two longer. Maybe the store over ordered, so they're sitting on peaches in their cooler for a couple of days. But when those peaches become mealy, it's almost always because they've been just sitting around too long. There's nothing like a fresh peach. That's why we work so hard with the folks at Giant and Martin's to make sure that their inventories are lean. We're making deliveries 3 and 4 times a week into their distribution center. So they're turning the peaches as quickly as possible. We're giving them the fresh peaches, as fresh as possible. But there are times when sometimes they get mealy. As far as picking the right peach, there really isn't a way. I mean, I always like to say, boy, have one with a little bit of firmness, not too soft, a little bit of firmness. That aroma is starting, and you should be okay. But there really is not an exact science, unfortunately, to how to pick a better peach off the counter.
All right, I have like 3 minutes and a couple questions, so I'm just going to try and roll a couple out.
Yeah.
Does your company test the product for contamination, thinking specifically those coming from Mexico?
Well, we don't have peaches from Mexico. We just have onions from Mexico. But yes, all our product is tested. Food safety is a huge, huge part of our business. All the farms are run through rigorous food safety protocol. They're tested by the government year after year. They go through audits. They have to score extremely high on their audits. If they don't, they have to make immediate changes or changes within a few months, depending on what changes are required. But to answer your question, I feel perfectly safe with everything that we ship, regardless of where it's coming from, regardless of what commodity it is, because the food safety protocol is so stringent. More so, I've been in this business for a long time. 20, 30 years ago, you didn't have any of this. And now it's a good thing. We're avoiding any catastrophes by testing all this product.
Excellent, thank you. When are peaches with split pits not good to eat?
So the split pit is when sometimes it happens to the trees as the peach grows. Sometimes that pit gets broken apart, and that's called a split pit. So sometimes when you bite into a peach, that pit is open. As long as there's no discoloration or liquid running out of the pit, you're fine. If there's liquid running out of that pit, or there's discoloration on the peach, then I wouldn't eat that section of the peach. I would just cut around it and eat what hasn't been touched by that. It won't hurt you. It's just not the best.
What happens to those hail damaged peaches you talked about? They made into jam?
A lot of them go into processing. One grower that we work with in the South has a huge processing facility. A lot of the companies use them, or they use outside processing facilities. So they go into a pack, what we call as number twos, and then they're sold primarily um, to processing plants. Sometimes they'll be sold to food service companies where they're going to be cutting the peaches or using the peaches, and they'll just cut around those hailed pits and use what's good in the peach.
Last question. Are peaches picked manually, or is there an automated way to pick them?
They are done manually. They are um, the trees are picked 4 or 5 times, sometimes 6 times throughout the season. So you go through. We have great workers in the fields that know when to pick the peach, when to leave the peach on, and maybe pick it again, in 2 or 3 days. But they're picked, they're put into a small little bag that they have around their hip, almost like a fanny pack, but it's kind of like a bag that holds, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 peaches. Then they move away from the tree and they have these bins that are out in the orchards on trailers that are hauled by tractors. And then they'll put them into those bins. And as those bins fill up, you get, I don't know how many, 15 or 20 bins on a trailer. Then the tractor brings it into the farm where they hydrocool them in the south, or up here in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, they put them into a cooler right away to kind of force air, put some forced cold air on them and get them cooled down right away. But they're all picked by hand.
Well, Michael, I'm going to say we are so appreciative. You had lots of thank you. This is great information messages. So I am going to say we're ending it, but I still have a couple more questions. So if you don't mind just spending a minute over, and if people need
Sure,
to leave, they
sure.
can leave. Yes. How many varieties of peaches does your typical grower produce in a single location?
So it varies from grower to grower. I would say the most that any grower has is probably 20 to 25 different varieties. A lot of them now are just initials and numbers, PF13, AS25. They used to have, O. Henry's and um, somebody mentioned Red Havens and Crest Havens, and they used to have all different names, Ruby Prince, a lot of Prince names. Um, but now they're going as they grow different varieties and they have different seeds for these trees. They're all numbered varieties, and nobody really pays attention to the variety anymore. And partially because if you say, "Oh boy, I really like the Red Haven peaches," well, they're only here for maybe a week to 10 days, and then you're on to another variety. So the varieties last anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. The varieties, if everything's going as planned, the varieties are overlapping one after another. So every week you're into a different variety. So,
Do you
but there's a lot of varieties, a lot of different
Right.
varieties.
Couple rapid fire questions. Do you
Yeah.
deal with any other produce?
Oh yeah, we do. I mentioned onions and peaches. We do some apples. We do watermelons out of Washington State, and we're just getting started. Very first time we got some brand new growers in Mexico that are growing lemons for us that we're going to start bringing into the United States probably in the next few days.
Excellent. Then heard the temperature in the cold months like January can go below 0 degrees on consecutive days. Does that affect the peach season?
No, not at all. No, that's part of the cold temperatures. As long as it doesn't stay 0 degrees for 30 to 60 days, we're fine. A couple days of 0 degrees is fine.
When this customer wants her peaches to ripen, she puts them in a brown paper bag. Is there a better way?
That's probably the best way. That's an old fashioned way. Not a lot of people still know about that, but that's probably the best way. What I would do is whether you put them in a brown paper bag or not, sometimes if you put them in a brown paper bag, they ripen a little faster than you'd like. If you just left them on the counter until they got to your desired softness, everybody likes them a little bit different. But once they get to your desired softness, then put them in the refrigerator. That'll stop the ripening process, and then they'll last for 3 or 4 days, maybe longer.
Will we soon see the PA sweet onion?
So we don't represent any growers with Pennsylvania sweet onions, but we provide Giant and Martin's with our onions from Georgia, which are the Vidalia onions, and also Peru, which is our Mayan sweets. We stopped shipping Mayan sweets from, no, I'm sorry. We stopped shipping Vidalias into Giant Martins this week because they are transitioning into Pennsylvania sweet onions. So if you don't see them in your store, Pennsylvania sweets, by the end of this week, I would say sometime next week, you'll see Pennsylvania sweet onions. They'll last through August into September, and then we'll go into sweet onions from Peru.
All right, very, very last question. Are there enough manual pickers available, or has a decline been seen?
As in anything, it's always hard to find help and to find good help. But right now, not a huge concern. Like I said, we have government funded programs that help us find these growers from different countries and bring them into the United States on a work visa for a short period of time, or a lengthy period of time. Then they go back to their home country, and then, like I said, we treat them extremely well. We have to with this whole government program. And the government program is not, they don't subsidize the payment. The growers pay for this help. But the growers help put this, or the government helps put this program together so that we can find these pickers and these workers. And so many of them love to come back year after year. So
And how do I store my peaches at home? Should they be left on the counter?
refrigerator for 3, 4 days, maybe 5, 6 days.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate your sharing your expertise with us.
You
This has
bet.
been wonderful. We appreciate your
Thank you.
time. Thank you, everybody, for staying on. Bye.